Over the fireplace in our living room hangs a large print of Caravaggio's painting, Supper at Emmaus. Melville and I chose this painting because 2020. As many of you know, we moved into our house in Clintonville on the day the bars and restaurants shut down. We were trying to figure out how to decorate our new home without leaving it. And we also wanted to support the places and people we cared about through lockdown. So we looked at the online shops of our favorite art museums, the Cleveland Museum of Art, Kelvingrove Gallery, and the Burrell Collection in Glasgow, and we found Caravaggio's Supper at Emmaus at the National Gallery in London. This painting summed up our hopes for our home, that it would be a place where Jesus was known in the breaking of bread. And after waiting several weeks for the print to ship from London and several more weeks for a frame to arrive, actually 3 frames after I messed up the measurements twice and Melville had to take over. He's now in charge of all custom frames in our house. We finally hung the print on the wall. I'm going to ask David to walk it around and show this to you. Supper at Emmaus depicts the moment Cleopas and his fellow disciple realize that their dinner companion is Jesus. Cleopas's arms have shot wide in surprise. The other disciple's about to jump up from his chair, while the servant looks on bewildered. Jesus reaches out to them with his right hand while his left hovers over a loaf of bread. It's a dramatic scene, made more vivid by Caravaggio's trademark strong shadows and strong light, pointing to the figure of Jesus. He is young, plump, rosy-cheeked, with the kind of lush curls I wish I could get into my hair. He must be the Son of God. 3 days in the tomb hardly affected him. What I didn't realize until a year or so after we'd finally hung up Supper at Emmaus is that Caravaggio painted that same scene twice. The print we have, the one David is showing right now from London, was done in 1601. In 1606, Caravaggio painted a second Supper at Emmaus. This one is in a museum in Milan. The composition is similar. Jesus and the 2 disciples are seated at a dinner table as 2 servants look on. But Cleopas and the other disciple haven't realized who Jesus is yet. They're leaning towards him. Their bodies and their burning hearts are drawn to him. The shadows in this painting are more powerful, and the light and the colors are more muted. And Jesus looks different. He's pale, tired, almost haggard. His hair is a mess of tangles. He looks like he has suffered and died, and he still hasn't shaken off the chill of the grave. I like the London painting we have, and I kind of wish we'd found the Milan one instead, because it's a more realistic depiction of that evening in Emmaus, a quiet supper with a worn-down, exhausted stranger who is more than he seems to be. This conversation on the road to Emmaus on Easter afternoon is the first time the risen Jesus has appeared to his disciples in the Gospel according to Luke. That morning, Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the other women had gone to Jesus' tomb and found it empty. 2 angels told them that he had risen from the dead. The women told the other disciples, who were skeptical. Resurrection is a shocking prospect when you're not expecting it. The disciples didn't believe it was possible. Simon Peter did go to Jesus' tomb and stooped to look inside and saw the linen cloths that wrapped Jesus' body lying there. But no one has seen Jesus until a mysterious stranger joins Cleopas and the other disciple, maybe Cleopas's wife, as they walk to the village of Emmaus. The 3 of them talk as they are traveling. Luke says it is 7 miles from Jerusalem. That part of Judea is pretty hilly, so it probably took them 2 or 3 hours. Still, the 2 disciples don't recognize Jesus. Shock and grief can mess with your brain, and their perception is off. But something about the stranger compels the two disciples to invite him to stay with them for supper. At their table, he becomes the host. He is the one who takes bread, blesses and breaks it, and gives it to them. And they know who he is. He has done this before. He took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to the crowds when he fed 5,000 people with only 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. He took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to the disciples at their last supper before he died. This is Jesus with them. He has really and truly risen from the dead. Cleopas and the other disciple have only just arrived in Emmaus, but they get up and hurry straight back to Jerusalem. And they tell the rest of the disciples how Jesus was made known to them in the breaking of the bread. We pray each time we gather at this table that Jesus will be known to us in the breaking of the bread. Sometimes we say or sing those words as we remember what Jesus did on the hillside for those crowds in that Last Supper with his disciples at that table in Emmaus. We take bread, bless and break it, and give it to each other. And somehow, in a mystical way we can never fully explain with our minds, we encounter Jesus in the bread and wine. We take him into our bodies and he becomes part of us. It passes human understanding, yet the truth of it burns in our hearts, that Jesus is really and truly present with us as we eat the bread and drink the wine. And Jesus' presence with us extends beyond the bread and wine. Caravaggio knew that when he painted that second supper at Emmaus, when he gave us this gray-faced, haggard Jesus, barely on this side of death's door. Caravaggio invites us to see Jesus really and truly present in the sick, the poor, the dying, the imprisoned, the exhausted, to see his presence in ourselves when we are sick or poor or exhausted, and to see his presence in those we meet. And the second painting of Supper at Emmaus asks the viewer, or at least it asks me, now that you know this worn-out, half-dead stranger is Jesus, what will you do for him? What does he need? How will you care for him? For several years now, St. John's has seen the risen Jesus in the people around us and cared for him through building responsibility, equality, and dignity, also known as BREAD. This coalition of faith-based organizations researches the Columbus area's most pressing problems, proposes solutions that have proven to be effective in other cities, and works with our civic leaders to create a metro area where everyone can thrive. This year, BREAD is focusing on increasing the urban tree canopy, reducing violence through cooperation between local law enforcement and neighborhoods, increasing affordable housing, and creating a municipal ID. The Nehemiah Action, where BREAD asks public officials to commit to actions, is this Tuesday evening. A group from St. John's will attend the Nehemiah Action. Information about it is in the announcements this week, and you can sign up in the atrium today. David and I are both going, and I hope you will join us. This is one way that we care for the risen Jesus in the people we meet and the strangers we haven't met yet. We encounter the risen Jesus each time we take, bless, break, and give bread in his name. And when we see the risen Jesus at this table, we also see him in every person we meet, especially in those who are poor or sick or hungry or oppressed. And when we see the risen Jesus in every person we meet, we serve the risen Jesus in them by loving our neighbor as ourselves and striving for justice and peace among all people. This is the movement we make each Sunday, seeking Jesus at this table, then going out to serve Jesus in the world. I cannot put this any better than Frank Weston, the Bishop of Zanzibar in East Africa, said it 100 years ago. He urged his people, go out and look for Jesus in the ragged, in the naked, in the oppressed and sweated, in those who have lost hope, in those who are struggling to make good. Look for Jesus. And when you see him, gird yourselves with his towel and try to wash their feet.